Hello and welcome to Knowing You, Being You, a series of conversations with change makers who all know that change, no matter how big or small, begins and ends with you. And today I am joined by Samantha Bearden, who's a Star Shaman and the creatrix of the Sacred DNA Restructure Method. And I'm thrilled to have her here. Welcome.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Yay! So what I'm doing with these is just a little bit of background as to how you came to be doing what you're doing now, so that you can sort of set the scene a little bit about your work and why that's so important.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have always been fascinated with, I want to say magic in the beginning, because when you're little, you don't know what it's called. It's just like magic. And how the DNA came to be, not the DNA came to be, but this in particular, I can remember very vividly as a youngster in my science class. And I think this is a cornerstone. As a youngster in my science class, and my science teacher, like just matter of factly throwing it out there, like, we have 12 strands of DNA, 2 of them are good, the rest of them are junk. And I didn't hear anything past that. I started to just kind of like obsess, like, what? So that's why I say that was my cornerstone. That was one of my pivotal points. And it stuck with me throughout my life. And then I grew up and, I would do tarot card readings, and I could read people's energy, or I could feel, and I just started to work into that, but I had to survive. And so I would have like regular jobs, but I was always the weird one, which I was fine with. And fast forward to about 1996, I came into this spiritual awakening of sorts. You get awakenings along the way, but this one was different. It was so different that I went and got a tattoo, but it was that different. Like, I needed a way to market, when I say market, I mean market. It had to do with the DNA. It had to do with all types of spirituality. And it just was like a light came on for me. And back in the 90s, DNA activation was not like it is now. We didn't really have the internet. We didn't really, in which I use the web, I use calls. But it was really a path that had to be walked. So basically, you got a glimpse of what you could be. You got a glimpse into your DNA, but then it was kind of like, now you got to get there. And so that was 22 years ago, and I was walking along this spiritual path, and it just became like I couldn't do it anymore. So I wanted to do something different because it wasn't working for me. And so I started to do, I started to go in a different direction, but you never escape the work that you've done on your DNA, but I didn't really know this. I do remember specifically one of the leaders, one of the masters, they would be like, you're going to do this work in the future. And at that time, I was looking at this person who, to me, looked like this really holy monk, like type person. I was like, no. I'm not doing that. I'm not trying to do all that. I want to have fun. And I'm like, it's always been my motto. If it's totally not fun, I'm totally not doing it. So I really hightailed it out of there, but never escaped that calling, and went on throughout my life. And then a few years ago, I just felt like I was doing kinesiology also back in the 90s, and in 96, I would say that kinesiology was what led me to that spiritual awakening in the 90s. And so, and I would do kinesiology. If you don't know what kinesiology is, it's working with, energetics, it's working with the body. And so I could, work with look at their organs, and I would use kinesiology to see if it was weak or strong. And then I would use kinesiology to test and see what products were good for them, because I was working with all natural products. So I was working in that field, and I was only working with my friends. Only my friends would work with me. So I wasn't making any money. But so I had to make money. So I started doing other things. But fast forward to, a few years ago, I was successful at doing things, and it was fun. And, I did events, I did VIP hosting, I did whatever I wanted to do, and I was pretty successful at it, but there was something missing for me. And it really started to bum me out. Like I was just like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I love it, but it's not making the difference in the world that I want to make. And I was just like, I just started, praying pretty much, just like, and then I was just like, let me meet people, like put me in this space. I need inspiration. And because there was a lack of inspiration, and I started, and I was online, and I actually ran into a very old friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a long time. And so we started talking, and she was like, what, you're doing kinesiology? That is awesome. That you can do, why don't you try to do this? So she inspired me to step outside of my comfort zone with kinesiology, because I was only doing it in the way that I had learned 20 years before, or 15 years at that time. So I started to do kinesiology. That's what I came back out doing, was kinesiology. And that was my thing. But that wasn't enough either. But I wasn't as Debbie Downer as I was when I wasn't doing it. So I was like, this is cool. But then I said, guides, I was like, there's something bigger that I am supposed to be doing, and I know it, and I don't know what it is, but I am ready. I'm ready. Just give it to me. And the thought of me having my DNA activated back in the 90s came back, and I was like, all right. Maybe, because I also had the vision of that in the past, and I was like, that's not going to work now, but okay, I see what you're saying. And I went to sleep one night and woke up, not really woke up, but sat up in the middle of the night and just started writing out the DNA Restructure Method, the first version of what it was. And I fell back asleep, and I woke up in the morning, and I was like, this is it. And that was it. So I'm also a doer. So I said, I've got to share this right now. And I didn't even know what I was saying. Like, I just went online and was just like, bleh, and people were like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I have to have it. That's what everybody said. They were like, I don't even know what you're saying, but I need it. I'm like, okay, that's how we're going to start things off. So that's how I started. And then it started to take a form. It started to take on a life of its own. I started to really be inspired by it. And that is how I created the DNA Restructure Method, the Sacred DNA Restructure Method. And I registered it and trademarked it and do it and now teach it.
So there's two things that just struck me as you were talking was one is that journey to finding your purpose and how it comes in layers, and if you're not watching, you're not sure that you don't know you're getting there. And the other really is that step-by-step journey into leadership, because that wasn't what you were looking for initially, was it? It was more fulfillment, but that's where it's taken you.
Yes. With the the journey, and if you're not listening, or that's also very, very challenging if you don't have a channel with which to bring it forth. That was one of the the most challenging issues that I had with the Sacred DNA Restructure Method, was articulating it. bringing it into this dimension where people could understand it. Like you said, people are like, I don't know what you're saying, but I got to have it. But that was because they were initially attracted to what I was saying, or me. They were just like, this girl's on fire. I want it. And, you know, that works for some of us. And so, but before that, you know, when you're in that space and you know that you're supposed, you know that there's something coming through, sometimes that knowing, you just like wrap that energy around it, and it tightens it up, and it holds you away from what's coming because you won't allow the flow. It's like when you're, you know, okay, you just got a new car. Say you're like looking for a new car, you were looking for a new car, and that's not working. That's, you know, like whatever. Or they're not giving you the deal that you want. You start to push further, you know, and harder. And when you're pushing harder because you're pushing back, they're not giving you what you want. When you push back, then you cut yourself off from that. And so it can be challenging. Another thing is just not being able to hear or channel, which I think is why I was so blessed for it to come to me in my sleep. Because I would be in my waking hour and I'm like, I don't really understand what you're saying. You know, I'll be getting these messages and I'm like, I'm not getting it. So that, you know, opening those channels, being open to whatever comes through, and maybe you have never heard it before. Like, that's what I tell my clients. You have to be open. You may hear stuff that you have never heard. You don't, you know, just allow it. Just be open and allow, because it's your message and it's going to come to you in the way that you need it. As far as the leadership goes, I've never shied away from that. I've never been one to not take the lead. I'm like, I got this. We're going to do this right now. So, and I know that can be a challenge. I know that it can be a challenge for a lot of people, because that's one of their things that they need to work through.
So the method now, I mean, because obviously it's evolved and it's changed, and it's continuing to evolve. But what's the impact of working with DNA? How does it do all of those things that you were just reflecting on?
How working with the DNA it's twofold. I want to touch on also the growth that I've had through working on this, because when I first came out of the gate, I really I only knew what I knew. And, you know, there's the scientific aspect of the DNA, and then there's this etheric spiritual aspect of it. And for a while, I like kind of hid under a rock because I didn't have and I still don't have all the scientific answers. But I do know, you know, I can hold a conversation around the DNA from a scientific point of view. It's not always welcome or very well received, but I'm like, whatever. I'm not here to please you. This is what I know. So in working with the DNA, it has proven to be challenging in the beginning, and still sometimes, because the biggest challenge is speaking in a way that the general public can receive. Because once you start talking DNA, people get really freaked out. They're like, wait a minute, you're gonna mess with my DNA? And it's the way that I approach it is this, from this standpoint of sovereignty, which can be taken any way. You know, people can have a different view of sovereignty, but I'm talking about like owning what is yours, like your DNA and the magic in your DNA. And that is the way that, you know, I approach it, is like, if you knew that you had a diamond mine, and I gave you the key, I said, I've got the key for you to go open this diamond mine that is all yours. You know, would you take the key? Would you go open the diamond mine? And so working with the DNA has been that sort of like eye-opening, it's really super magical to see the transformation of the clients that I work with on not only, you know, a spiritual level, but a physical level, a mental level, you know, people that have been sick their whole lives are not sick anymore, or, you know, people that have had poor relationships with, you know, their loved ones don't have that anymore. They're able to, you know, release that. There's so many, I mean, like, it's always a reward because I keep doing it. If it wasn't, I wouldn't do it anymore.
It's not fun.
If it's not fun, I'm not doing it. So I don't know if that answered your question. If you want to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, no, you touched on something that's so important there. Is that was you said, you know, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, that it's working on all of those levels. It's working on every aspect of who we are, rather than just thinking about it as one specific
Physical
part of us. And, you know, we are, you know, we cannot embody anything unless we accept that there is a mental, physical, spiritual, etc. that is.
We're dimensional. All of those aspects are dimensions of who we are, and they are tied into our DNA. Our DNA, what we have been told to believe is that we only have 2 good strands of DNA. That's our physical DNA. That's what that part is. The rest of it is emotional, spiritual, you know, mental, like all of that is all of those intangibles that is also part of the DNA. So you can't, that's why, you know, when we were younger, the rest of it's junk. Because we can only view these 2 strands because that's the physical part of us, but we have 12. Like for one thing, it's like, how can you say that we have 12, but it's, you know, 10 of them are junk when you can observe that they're not? The only thing, you can't say that they're junk. And I couldn't believe that they would call it junk DNA. That's where all the yumminess lies. That's where the expansion of us as a race lies, is in those upper strands. These 2 strands that make up who we are is where our sickness, or what we would call karma, or, you know, reincarnation, all of that is. The rest of it is where the magic is. The rest of it is where, when you get in touch with it and you connect with it and you open up to it and expand into it, it really does open up your world and your creator, you know, your creator energy, because we create this world. And especially in this time period, it is so, so important that people know that they're the creators. We are the creators of our reality. We created this, and we're not victims and things like that.
So it's those 10 strands are where our true essence and potentiality reside in many ways. Yes. Okay. So, I mean, you mentioned that people, you know, they have physical improvements, and spiritual improvements and emotional improvements. Is it worth trying to explain how DNA restructuring actually works? Because, as you said, people have that sort of like, don't touch my DNA, you know, just, and that's in theory a reaction of somebody who's being sovereign. It's like, don't touch my DNA, but actually it's not intrusive, is it?
No, I'm not operating. It's not that kind of thing. And before I answer that, amazingly, because it's important for us to know that we are like a collective energetic being. Let's just say, you know, we're a race, human race, and on down, and each one of our cells has its own, you know, energetic makeup all the way down. So all the way out, all the way down. And that we have raised our vibration so much so that scientists are now able to actually see a 3rd strand that's because we have tapped into it and it's now being visible. We've actually, we have like opened our eyes to it. We can now see it. So the DNA, the activation and the restructuring that I do and the practitioners that I train do is different than what is out there, because most activations out there are done in the, you know, ethers. They're done working with your energy, your higher self, if that, and, you know, that's it. What we do, we take it many, many, many steps further, and we bring the work that we've done down into the person's physical experience. And in doing so, we uncover, you know, lifetimes of, let's say, vows. You know, that's an important thing. Vows that people have made in previous lifetimes. If you were a nun or a monk, you know, vows of poverty, vows of celibacy, vows of chastity, all of these things, all of these vows. And I say this because most of us have had those kinds of lifetimes. We've had many, many lifetimes. I mean, like, it feels true and right to say that we have had many. But in those, when you're, you know, a holy person and you make a vow, you know that when your body passes, the vow still goes with you. So you carry these vows through you throughout lifetimes, and you don't need them. They're not doing any good in this lifetime. However, the energy around that will affect you physically. For instance, a vow of celibacy, a vow of chastity affects your reproductive organs. One of the aspects of that, it affects your reproductive organs. You know, vows of poverty will obviously affect your ability to receive abundance. Your view is kind of skewed from of abundance. And so when we look at the DNA and we see these certain seals that are frequency fences to us connecting with our higher selves, and we remove those, you know, off of the etheric strand, so off of those 10 strands or above, there's higher as well. But after we remove them, it's an etheric process. It's you know, it's a quantum energetic type of work. However, it still has the effects in the physical body. And so what we do is we bring it to the forefront in the physical body, and we see how it's affected that, and we correct the path. So we basically create a tabula rasa, a blank slate for you to start over and create from where you are moving forward.
Diamond mine.
Diamond mine.
Mm. So it's a really powerful process. And the reason, you know, I wanted that within the overall, you know, in this series, within the overall mix, is to show that it's, we get so up here in our heads, don't we? That she's just remembering that there's an audio to this as well. We get in our heads, and we need to actually be in our bodies, fully in our bodies, and allow our bodies to be connected to the rest of who we are, and see ourselves as beyond the physical.
Beyond the physical. That is it right there. That's what this work does. It really opens you up to how, you know, vast, you know, how we are, I want to say immortal, because honestly, like, even if we let this body go, our energy, our soul, it progresses and moves on to something else. Like, we are really amazing beings. We have been told, and we've bought and sold to ourselves thousands and thousands of lifetimes that we are not, that we're just human, that we're just flesh and blood and bone, and we have like some thoughts here and there, and then, you know, like, well, now we're dead, you know, and we are so much more than that. We are so much more than that. And in this work, we get to see the creator within. Like, you really get to explore that part of yourself. You get to embrace it and see it. You're like, whoa, you know, I actually am pretty magical. Another thing that comes out is your psychic gifts, like, woo, your connection, your connection to other being. Like, those gifts get like unlocked like that when we do this work. It's really rewarding.
And I'm always so impressed with your vision of activating and restructuring 1 million people through the way that you do.
Not by myself.
No, that would take you a while. But what do you think, what do you feel, or what do you see as the impact on a global, collective global level of activating 1 million people?
Oh, I see, you know, after 1 million, it's going to be like snowball. 1 million is the tipping point for this. And just in the last few years doing this work and expanding it to training others to do this work, you know, many doors have opened to this, you know, ascending and transcending work that we do. Like, I can see, and this is just a few thousand people that we have done in this method, you know, and each time it just makes a difference. It makes a huge difference because it doesn't stop with the person that we work with, you know, because they have their field of reach, they have their immediate surroundings, and they impress upon people, and it's like a ripple effect. And I see this. I know that we will get to 1,000. I mean, 1 million. I know that we totally will. I mean, like, if I'm not a numbers girl, but I'm like, if I have 100 people that are, if I have 100 people that are doing the restructure method, and they go out and they do like 10,000, you know, like, or 100,000, you know, whatever. It just like, it expands from there, and I see it happening, and it's becoming more known, the work.
And it needs to be very widely known. But how many practitioners have you got now?
30.
30. Pioneers.
Yes, they are the pioneers, and I tell them that all the time. You know, I'm like, we're doing this together, and I love my pioneers. I love these ladies. I really want a guy in there, but I love the fact that, you know, we all found each other in this lifetime. We all knew that we were going to meet in this lifetime. We all knew that we were going to do this work and remember it and how important it is. And it's not just this work, because it's great. Like, the restructure method, the cool thing about the restructure method, one of the cool things about it, is that it's not a modality where you have to do it a certain way to get it done. It's really something, it is a method that allows you to fold yourself into it as it becomes part of you and what you're up to in the world. And that is beautiful, because it allows people to expand their own talents and use their gifts in their way, and also grow. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So do you think, I mean, it's a contentious question possibly, but do you think that the time of modalities is gone?
No, I don't think so. I think there's something for everyone. You know, I think that no matter where you are, if you are wanting to wake up, if you are craving to wake up, that something will show up that resonates for you at that moment. Yeah. And that is going to lead you on, you know, whatever journey you need to take. And I think that modalities still play a part in that. And you know, I don't mean to say still play, but I really think that there is something for everyone, and wherever you start is where you start. And you just keep opening yourself up, and always question. That's what I tell my restructure method practitioners when we first start. I'm like, be open to unlearning. Be open to challenging what doesn't resonate with you.
Yeah.
Ask those questions. Let your soul explore what it is. Be open to that. We have bought into shit, over and over. I did so well going through this whole but we've bought into this stuff over and over again, and we just when a red flag comes up in our mind, we just say, oh well, it's like this out there, so I should just like put that thought down. And I'm like, no, entertain that thought. What does that mean to you? Why is it raising a red flag in you? So with the modality thing, if that's where you start, awesome.
Yeah.
You just keep going, because you don't ever want to stop or be stagnant.
Yeah, and so there are now 30 practitioners. Does that include you, or are you 31?
No, I'm 31.
31.
Globally.
Yeah.
And there are a few I'm waiting for to get certified. So it is a certification process. It's not, easy peasy. It's not really easy. Anyone can do it if they have the wherewithal, but it does like challenge lots of things, and you have to be able to work through them so that you can be this container for the people that you serve. You're here to serve.
Absolutely.
What we're doing, it is a service.
Yeah,
it is a service to humanity.
So if somebody wanted to start their journey by exploring getting their own DNA activated and restructured, how do they find one of these 31?
I put it out there to the universe. They can start with me, and if you're on Facebook, most of them have on their websites that they do Sacred DNA Restructure Method. I am creating an academy that will feature the DNA Restructure Method practitioners. And it's not finished yet, but you can always start with me, and I will listen to what you have to say. And if we're not, if we're not compatible, I will definitely find you a practitioner. But online, definitely on the Facebook, they're all over. If you in the Abundance Flash Mob, most of them are in there. But yes, we're around. Just put it out there that you want to have your DNA activated and restructured, and ask for your higher self to connect you to your perfect practitioner.
Excellent. And if people wanted to become a practitioner themselves, they need to get in touch with you?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, but on the horizon, those who want to teach the method, that's going to be coming in the next probably few years. We have levels of practitioners, and the mastery level would be able to teach the method, and I'm so excited. Yay. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it is an amazing thing. It is an amazing thing that you brought forward. Excuse me a second. No. No.
I have to do it too. Look, my kid will be busting in here anyway. But we have real lives, people. But yes, so I would. They would be.
Hey, no.
Where am I having tea? It's live, girl. Look.
Yes. Few minutes.
I love it.
Yes, well, it's inevitable.
Don't edit this out. I love it so much.
No, I'm not editing it out. I can't be bothered. It's real life.
Yeah, it's real life. So it's a legacy, and I have always wanted to leave a legacy. Like that was another thing too. I wanted to leave a legacy. I think after I'm long gone, this will still be around, and it makes me just feel yeah, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's been really good, because I've known lots of your story before, but there are bits of that I didn't know, and I think it really shares something that could be seen as quite eclectic in a very open and way that's very accessible to people, which is exactly what you're after, isn't it? I mean, you want people to understand that this is something that anybody can have, and anybody, and it will make a massive difference to anybody and everybody. As you said, the ripple effect. So it's really, really important. So I want to say thank you so much.
Yes. I want to say one last thing too, because this came through too, is that, you know, we're on the precipice. We are creating our reality right now, moving forward, you know, in an uncharted time and space, and that the wherewithal to do that is in your DNA, you know, and having access to all of that is within you is so important.
Absolutely. Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you. And make sure that your links are all beneath the video, so anybody can come and find you if they
Yay.
Excellent. Thank you.